Sir, at the Stern School of Business.
Statement. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to start from the perspective of what I'm not. I'm not a climate scientist. I'm not an expert on banking. I'm not a macroeconomist. I'm not an academic researcher. I'm a dabbler. I dabble in lots of different things. And I've spent 40 plus years observing how businesses and investors behave. And what I've discovered is psychology and perception have a lot more effect on that behavior than economic models. So as an outsider, I'm going to give you my perspective on what I've seen happen around climate change. And this might not be diplomatic, but might as well cut to the chase. Here's what I've seen over the last 20 years. Climate change is the most publicized, the most warned about, and the most discussed existential crisis that I've ever seen. And you're saying that's merited, that's fine. Second, governments all over the world claim to care about climate change. In fact, every year they gather together in the most recent, the most recent meeting of COP28. Hypocrisy runs rampant in this space. It was said in Dubai. They talk about how they're going to change the world. They set targets that everybody knows will not be met. And I'll guarantee you there'll be a COP29, perhaps in Riyadh, where we will repeat the whole process again. Companies and businesses all claim to be green. They claim to care about the climate. And I'm going to gag the next time I see the words net zero in a company's financial statement, or an airline asking me to pay an extra $40 to see if I want to reduce my carbon footprint. And in this process, they've been aided and abetted by consultants and experts who fed them the buzzwords. And let's face it, ESG is an acronym. It doesn't even merit the notion of an idea or a concept. It's an acronym. Sustainability, just as much of an acronym. And these consultants have told these companies that they can have their cake and eat it too, that they can be green and be more valuable. Investors, same phenomenon. They've pumped in trillions of dollars. Don't tell me enough money hasn't been invested in green spaces. Trillions of dollars. And again, with the promise that they can deliver higher returns while being good. Consumers have been given lots of different ways in which they can show how wonderful they are. They can buy green products. They can invest in green funds. They can misbehave all day and come back home, buy an ESG fund, and say, I'm okay again. But here's, I think, the most sobering reality. After 20 years, trillions of dollars, and all of this talk, if you look at how much of our energy comes from fossil fuels, it's barely budged. In fact, you know that our dependence on fossil fuels decreased more between 1975 and 1995 than it has in the last 20 years. And the reason for that was actually the one alternative energy source that most green energy people claim to hate, which is nuclear energy. Over the last 20 years, our dependence on fossil fuels has gone from 85% to 81.5%. We've reduced dependence by 3.5%, and we paid $10 trillion for that amazing fact. I'll let you do the math on that. If you really want to get the fossil fuel dependence down to 50%, you work out how much it'll cost. This notion that you can get good without sacrifice is the heart of why all of this space is in trouble. I'm not in any position to give you advice on what you should do with your banking, your pension funds, but I'll tell you what I think. I think you got to stop with this apocalyptic stuff. Do you really think telling people that the world will end in 35 years is going to make them behave better? That's like telling somebody they have 60 days to live and say, behave healthfully. It's not going to happen. So even if you believe that the world will end if climate change is not met, telling people that is the worst possible strategy psychologically. Second, remove virtue from this discussion. This notion that if you believe that climate change is before, you're a good person. If you don't, you're a bad person. It's contaminating the discussion. It's making the perfect the enemy of the good. In fact, much of the research, and let's face it, much of the research on ESG and sustainability is not what the paper it's written on, but the research that actually takes a closer look has concluded that shades of gray are better than black and white, that investing in brown innovation is better than investing in green innovation. That accepting shades of gray is, I think, incremental change is going to be much more effective than this, hey, if you don't do this, we'll all die.
Okay, Professor Damodaran, this is a fascinating statement, and I think we're going to have a really good discussion today, but I have to stop you there.